She said the HOA covers her gas, but the sheriff didn't know I owned the station. People don't believe me when I say the craziest thing I've ever seen at my gas station wasn't a guy riding a lawnmower through the car wash or a cow wandering into the mini-mart. No, those were normal. The craziest thing was Karen Whitmore demanding free gas because the HOA pays for it. My name's Grace Mendoza, and I've run Clear Ridge Gas and Feed for 7 years now. It's an independent family business just off County Road 28, a dusty stretch between the highway and nowhere. I inherited it from my father, who bought the station in '89 after retiring from the sheriff's department. He left it to me after he passed in 2017, and I've been holding the line ever since. Clear Ridge isn't fancy, but it's the only full-service station in a 10-mile radius. Farmers, truckers, and weekenders all stop through. We've always operated on respect, community, and old-school trust, but the town's changed. Since 2021, we've had an influx of retirees from the city folks who want small-town charm without doing any of the small-town work. They came with rules, and HOA bylaws, and 1,000 ways to tell us how we were doing it wrong. Karen Whitmore was the loudest of them. She'd moved into a subdivision called Oak Vista Preserve. Sounds official? Right. But here's the kicker. It was a gated community built on private ranch land that never had a legitimate HOA, just a volunteer community standards committee that acted like a government. Karen appointed herself president, naturally, where she started small flyers in mailboxes, notes on fences, but soon she was issuing fake citations for people letting their dogs off-leash or leaving porch lights on past 9 p.m. The real trouble began when she extended her authority beyond Oak Vista. She came into my station one Friday afternoon, driving a shiny black Escalade, windows tinted like a drug lord's. "Fill her up," she barked, handing her keys to my teenage cashier. "Jess, I happen to be stocking the fridge." I stepped out, wiping my hands on my jeans. "Ma'am, this isn't full service," I said. "You've got to pump your own." Karen narrowed her eyes. "Excuse me, that's not how it works for HOA members." "HOA?" I asked. She smiled like I was a dumb stray. "Oak Vista Preserve. We have a fuel agreement with the community. Our gas is covered under Rural Service Access. You send the invoice to the HOA address on this card." She slid me a laminated sheet that looked like it had been printed at Kinko's and signed with a ballpoint pen. It said, "Oak Vista Preserve Rural Enforcement Division. This vehicle is entitled to fuel service per Article 7.6 of Community Code. Invoice all services to HOA, account Navrozoa 4K. I blinked. "Lady, this is a chevron." She frowned. "That's not very cooperative. Ms. Mendoza. You know my name." She smiled. "We keep records. And frankly, your station needs to be brought up to community standards." I leaned over and hit the emergency shutoff on pump 2. "You're not getting a drop until you pay up front like everyone else." That's when she pulled out her phone. "I'm calling the sheriff," she snapped. "You're denying services guaranteed under a community contract. That's theft." Jess, wide-eyed, whispered, Grace." Karen was already shouting into her phone. "Yes, this is Karen Whitmore, president of the HOA. I'm being denied service by a hostile business owner." I could hear the dispatcher asking for clarification. Karen yelled louder. "She's threatening me. She's refused to honor my access rights. I'm in fear for my safety." I laughed out loud. Because the sheriff, he's my older brother. When the sheriff's SUV pulled into the lot, the heat off the blacktop could have fried an egg. Karen was already pacing in front of her Escalade like she was preparing a closing argument in court. The phone was still in her hand, the fake HOA badge still clipped to her blouse like it meant something. I leaned against the wall of the mini-mart, arms crossed. Jess stood beside me, chewing her lip. Then out stepped Sheriff Nathan Mendoza, my big brother. Khaki uniform, aviators, 6'3" of calm, composed, no BS authority. He looked from Karen to me. "Let me guess this has something to do with fake HOA citations again." Karen stormed toward him. "Thank God you're here." I was beginning to think this place was lawless. He raised one eyebrow. "Karen Whitmore, right. That's President Whitmore. she said sharply. Of the Oak Vista Preserve Community Authority. Nate didn't flinch. Ma'am, Oak Vista Preserve isn't recognized as an official HOA by the county clerk or the State Property Commission. Karen's eyes bulged. Excuse me. He turned and looked at me. You good? Grace Peachy, I said, and smiled. She wanted free gas and flashed a fake authority card. Karen gasped like I'd slapped her. That's a legally binding community contract. You can't legally bind a gas station, Nate said dryly, especially not one outside your subdivision. Karen's voice started to rise. This is harassment. I am entitled to protected services under Article 7 of the Rural Easement Clause, ma'am, Nate said, now flipping open a notepad. There is no such clause in state law. I'm going to need to see identification. Karen waved the laminated sheet like a sword. This is my identification. Nate sighed. Jess, can you bring me the store camera footage? Karen froze. What do you need footage for? To confirm what happened here? And whether I need to charge you with filing a false police report? That was when the crowd started gathering. Trucks idled in the lot. The old ranchers from up north, some young bikers from town, folks who'd seen Karen's antics around town but never up close. Phones came out, fingers pointed. Isn't that the HOA lady who wrote a noise citation for a rooster crowing? One guy muttered. She tried to fine my grandma for planting marigolds on the curb. Someone else said. Karen started backing toward her SUV. This is insane. You people don't understand how community standards work. This station should want our approval. Nate stepped forward. Ma'am, you pumped 6832 of gas. Do you intend to pay or not? Her voice cracked. I don't have my wallet. Then you need to wait here until we figure this out. She tried to open her car door. Ma'am, Nate said, louder this time. You are not free to leave. And just like that, the HOA president was being detained by the sheriff she called later in his office. Nate pulled out a manila folder labeled Whitmore. Karen, unlicensed community violations inside were printouts, emails, photos of fake citations, video screen grabs. She's been targeting small businesses like yours. Grace, he said. And we think she's collecting funds from some of her residents under the lie that she's managing local services. Isn't that fraud? Yup. I leaned back, heart pounding. So what happens now? She's going to wish she never demanded free gas. I'll tell you that. The morning after Karen's gas station stunt, I woke up to a Facebook post that nearly made me spill my coffee. Attention Oak Vista residents, due to non-compliance and willful disrespect of community service obligations, Clear Ridge Gas and Feed has been blacklisted. Do not support this business. Further, the County Sheriff's Office has violated Community Conduct Code 3.8 by failing to assist a distressed HOA member. Karen Whitmore, Acting Enforcement Director. She was doubling down on my page, tagging me, and the sheriff's office. I blinked, then laughed, but it was the kind of laugh that sits on a fuse. Jess texted me 5 minutes later. She printed flyers. They're taped to pump 3. And also, someone egged the front door. I drove to the station in silence. The damage was clear. Cracked yolks ran down the glass. Flyers were stapled into the corkboard by the entrance. One of them read, "This facility is under review by the Oak Vista Preservation Authority." Another said gasoline withheld from HOA members may result in finable offenses. And in the corner of the parking lot, Karen's Escalade, parked, idle, with a dash cam pointed at the front door. She was surveilling us. I called Nate. She tagged your department in an HOA violation. She said you violated Community Conduct Code 3.8. A long pause. Then Grace, I'm bringing someone with me. When Nate showed up 30 minutes later, he wasn't alone. Beside him stood a sharp-eyed woman in business slacks and state credentials clipped to her blouse. This is Deputy State Auditor Serena Cho, Nate said. She specializes in community fraud, especially unlicensed HOA abuse. Serena stepped inside, cool and composed. You keep records. Ms. Mendoza. I handed over everything: Karen's fuel entitlement card, her flyers, the laminated sheet from the gas pump, the store surveillance footage, and the Facebook posts. I've had 6 different neighbors say she's been collecting HOA service dues, I said, and none of them have receipts. Serena looked up. That's tax evasion, at best. Extortion at worst, Nate added. Then Serena asked a question that gave me chills. Have you heard of the case in Maricopa County where a woman formed a fake HOA and fined a neighborhood nearly $40,000 over 3 years? I shook my head. Karen's showing the same pattern. Fake codes, false fees, weaponized authority. But she got sloppy calling law enforcement. You don't call the real sheriff when your whole empire is built on lies. That night, Karen's Facebook post disappeared. Her HOA page went private, but we weren't done. We started gathering people, quietly. Nate, Serena, me, and 5 business owners who'd been targeted: 2 ranchers, a mobile mechanic, a feed supplier, and an older woman named Bev who ran the quilt shop. She sent me a warning about textile uniformity. Bev said my porch flag disrupted visual cohesion. She tried to inspect my diesel tanks without credentials. The feed guy added. She left a note saying my dog wasn't HOA approved. One rancher said, I live 6 miles outside her gate. It wasn't just a few bad interactions anymore. It was organized deceit. Serena opened a binder. If we gather at least 12 affidavits and evidence of Karen collecting funds, I can trigger a state-level investigation and freeze any accounts under the Oak Vista Authority name. Freeze. She won't be able to access a dollar. Her fake power dries up instantly. That's when the plan clicked into place. And I knew how to bait the trap. We called it the Community Standards Forum. Harmless sounding. Civil. Karen's kind of language. The flyer was printed in the same color palette as her HOA notices, soft beige with a gold trim, and read, Oak Vista residents and Greater County neighbors, join us for a town hall to discuss updates to our rural service agreements and community engagement standards. Location clear, Ridge Town Hall, hosted by concerned citizens of Oak Vista time, 6 p.m. Wednesday. No official logos, no names, no agencies, just enough vague bureaucracy to draw her in, and it worked. By 5:45 p.m., Karen's Escalade was parked out front, her heels clacking up the steps of the town hall like she was entering Parliament. She had a folder tucked under one arm and her HOA name badge pinned front and center. Inside, folding chairs were set up in rows. The room was half full, already ranchers in jeans, small business owners in flannel, retirees, a few teachers from the local school. Serena Cho sat quietly in the back, plain clothes. Sheriff Nate stood off to the side, arms crossed, blending in. Karen strutted up to the front row like she owned it and sat dead center. When I walked to the podium, her face lit up with contempt. Well, she said loud enough for half the room to hear. This should be entertaining. I ignored her. Thank you all for coming. We're here to talk about what makes a real community and what doesn't. A murmur rippled across the room. I clicked the projector. The screen lit up with a document, Oak Vista Preserve, non-existent entity, per county clerk's office, stamped, dated, verified. Karen shifted. I clicked again. A slideshow began screenshots of HOA letters, false citations, fake bylaws with no legal standing. Click. A video clip of her screaming at Jess at the gas station. This is covered. I run this county click. A screen showing collected dues over $28,000 in so-called HOA fees transferred into a private account under K. Whitmore Community Services, LLC. Click. A split-screen comparison. One side showed the actual Arizona HOA statute book. The other side showed Karen's fabricated community conduct codes. The silence was brutal. Then Serena Cho stood up. She didn't introduce herself. She just held up her badge and said, calmly, this entire operation is illegal, and it ends tonight. Karen jumped to her feet. I demand you shut this down immediately. This is slander. Serena held up a sealed document. Ms. Whitmore, this is a cease and desist from the state auditor's office. Effective immediately, You are ordered to stop all operations under the Oak Vista name. You are also under investigation for fraud, impersonation of legal authority, harassment, and unlawful collection of funds. Karen gasped. You can't do this. Nate stepped forward. Actually, we can, and we are. He nodded to his deputy, who stepped forward with a warrant. Karen grabbed her purse and tried to push through the aisle, but the ranchers weren't moving. Bev, the sweet old quilter, folded her arms and said, You trampled this town long enough. Karen stumbled, almost tripping on her heels, and shrieked. You'll all regret this, Serena replied. That may be, but you're going to remember it. Karen was escorted out to stunned silence. Phones came out, photos, a few cheers. Someone clapped, then more, until the entire room stood on its feet. Nate leaned over and whispered, You just took down a fake government? Sis. I blinked back tears. Not for her, for all of us. The dust didn't settle overnight. Truth rarely sweeps in like a miracle. It crawls, humbles, and rebuilds. Karen Whitmore's fake empire collapsed publicly, but what it left behind was quieter, harder to fix trust that had been fractured. Neighbors divided, and a strange shame that we'd all let it go on so long. For weeks after the town hall, people trickled into my station not just for gas, but for conversations. Old man Keller, who used to glare at me every time I refused to take community checks, stopped by with a pecan pie. Guess I was wrong, he said gruffly. Didn't realize she had us all fooled. Teachers from the elementary school came in to thank me. So did ranchers, teenagers, and even a few Oak Vista residents, those who'd paid her dues out of fear or guilt, never questioning the laminated badges or pinking fines. She fined me $75 for parking my truck too close to a yucca plant. One man whispered like he was confessing a sin. I thought I had to pay. We built a bulletin board in the gas station community standards for real this time. It had nothing to do with fines or fences. It had to do with being decent, helpful, united. One day, May from the feed store brought me a folded sheet of paper. You should see this, she said. It was the front page of the Arizona watchdog fake HOA president faces multiple felonies in countywide fraud case. Whitmore faces jail time. Community calls for reform. According to the article, Serena's investigation had uncovered 2 fake LLCs, over $60,000 in enforcement dues, and 5 local banks that had flagged her deposits for suspicious activity. Karen had been collecting money for years through threats, false citations, and good old-fashioned intimidation. When the footage of her gas station meltdown went viral, it sparked more tips. One came from a former HOA volunteer who admitted she quit after Karen forced her to sign blank documents she wasn't allowed to read. The state attorney general released a statement calling it one of the most brazen examples of community-level impersonation in Arizona history. She was arrested formally 3 weeks after the sting, booked for wire fraud, impersonating a public official, and filing false reports. Bail was denied. The Escalade seized, her HOA office evicted, the Facebook group deleted, but our town didn't stop there. We formed a real community council, volunteer-based, but transparent. Sheriff Nate joined as a liaison. Serena helped us write bylaws that actually meant something. I chaired the small business subcommittee. We put together a fraud awareness day in the school gym, complete with flyers explaining what real authority looks like, how to verify legal notices, and where to report fake ones. It wasn't glamorous work, but it felt honest, like building a fence after a fire. At our first meeting, I looked around at the folks gathered: Bev from the quilt shop, Ramon from the feed trucks, teenagers from the high school who now volunteered for community outreach. And I realized something: Karen hadn't just built a fake system. She'd revealed how hungry people were for real belonging and how easy it was to weaponize fear when folks were too exhausted or too polite to fight back. A month later, Nate walked into my station during sunset. The sky burned gold over the desert ridgeline. He handed me a letter. I unfolded it. To Grace Mendoza. In recognition of your courage, leadership, and unshakable integrity in the face of intimidation and fraud, The state of Arizona hereby awards you the Citizen Justice Medal, Office of the Attorney General. I read it twice. Heart pounding. You earned it, Nate said, grinning. And I'm proud of you. I swallowed hard. I just said no to free gas. He laughed. You stood up when it counted. Most don't. Fake power thrives where real community is silent. Karen called the sheriff to have me arrested for denying her something she was never owed. But she didn't realize the sheriff was family, and truth was on our side. If you've ever seen someone abuse imaginary authority, ask yourself, would I speak up? Would I ask questions? Push back, because justice doesn't come from badges or titles. It comes from us. Have you ever stood up to a bully in your community or seen someone pretend to have power they didn't share your experience below? Let's talk about justice, courage, and what real leadership looks like.